How does the son of a Presbyterian minister wind up winning a Pulitzer Prize for writing a wildly inaccurate newspaper column read by millions of people? That's the question posed by humor columnist Dave Barry's 2025 memoir titled Class Clown, The Memoirs of a Professional Wiseass: How I Went 77 Years Without Growing Up. This week on C-SPAN's Afterwords podcast, a discussion on satire and humor with Dave Barry and novelist Carl Hiaasen. Hiaasen also has a new book titled Fever Beach. It's a satirical crime novel which he says was inspired by real events in Florida and the January 6th riot at the Capitol. That conversation between authors Dave Barry and Carl Hiaasen coming up in just a minute on Afterwords. This is Afterwords from C-SPAN. Here's author Carl Hiaasen kicking off a conversation with fellow writer and humorist Dave Barry at the Miami Book Fair in November of 2025.
Look at all these people. This is amazing. Thank you all for coming. Dave and I have this all mapped out. I'm going to say a few sentences and then throw it to Dave. Thanks for being here. I know some people are still being seated. This is not our problem, really. We're here. We're here to, obviously, to push our books. And so I'm going to throw it to Dave, who's got a memoir. I'm going to start with a question. What is the difference between an autobiography and a memoir?
I don't know. I think there are probably fewer lies in an autobiography. I don't know for sure. But anyway, I did write a memoir. We're going to get around to crapping all over the state of Florida eventually. But we're first going to talk a little bit about our books, although Carl's books are really crapping all over the state of Florida as a general. But yeah, I wrote a memoir. It's called Class Clown. I actually was elected class clown of my high school class. And I was one of those kids who was something of a discipline problem in school and was told more than once that by teachers, that's very funny, but you can't joke your way through life. Which turns out to be inaccurate. You can, and that's what I did, and that's what this book is about. But I'm old. I'm 78 years old, so I was around started out like a long time ago, and that's what the beginning of the book is about. But people would ask me a lot, and one of the reasons I wrote the book, where do you get your sense of humor? Where do your jokes come from? And in my case, it was pretty obvious to me, looking back. It was my mom. I had a very funny mother. She was a housewife in the 50s. She had 4 kids. And she dealt with all the housewife stuff in a little town called Armonk, New York, which was a suburb of New York City. And but she was not like the other moms. She had a very edgy, very dark sense of humor, extremely dark. We had a pond in the woods behind the house. We lived in a wooded area. And sometimes we would go play around this pond, which you'd never let your kids do today. But back then, they had extra kids. Parents were just not as concerned. And my sister and I would be going out to the pond, and we go to my mom, like, we're going to the pond. And my mom would go, "Don't drown, kids," in this real cheerful June Cleaver voice, which was not how the other moms would have said that. I mean, they would have not made a joke out of that. And I don't think my mom wanted us to drown, but she was not unwilling to make a joke about the possibility that we would drown. That was that was sort of like our upbringing, was you could make fun of everything. When we would go, she would take us, there were 4 of us, take us on her errands when she was doing shopping in the little village of Armonk, New York, take us around, drag us around. And all the local tradesmen loved my mom because she was not ordinary. I have a vivid memory. There was a meat market in downtown Armonk, Brissetti's Market, and Ray Brissetti, the owner, one of the brothers that owned it, was a big fan of my mom. And we'd go in there, and I remember he'd be slicing bologna behind the counter, and he'd go, "How you doing, Marion?" And she'd go, "Just shitty, Ray." And they would roar with anyway. So that was and one more. This is like, now that you know my mom a little bit. when my dad died, it was a big deal. It was very sad, and there was a big service, and then we had my dad's ashes in a box, and just the family, my mom, my two brothers, my sister, and me, took my dad to the graveyard, to the Middle Patton Cemetery, where they had dug a little hole, and it was a rainy, gloomy afternoon, and then we were all crying, weeping, because this is my dad, and we put him in the ground, and we said some words, and we're all weeping, and then we put the dirt over it and start to walk away, and I've got my mom on my arm, and we're crying, and it's raining, and it's gloomy, and my mom starts to read the gravestones, and she goes, "So that's why we don't see him around anymore." So even then, she could not resist the temptation. So that was where it came from. So I talk about that in the book, and then I talk about getting into the newspaper business, ultimately coming to Miami, becoming a colleague of Carl Hiaasen, and it was a wonderful opportunity for me to come here. Miami is like, this is a very target-rich environment if you're a humor. In fact, the whole state of Florida, as we often said, although I'm a defender, Carl's more of an attacker of Florida, I'm more of a defender. I say, look, there's 23 million people here. Is it fair to judge 23 million people just because of the actions of 21 million people? So, but I write a lot in the book about one of the greatest sources of humor for me turned out to be my readers. I had wonderful readers. And Carl can attest to this. If you're a columnist, you do have a relationship with readers. They write to you a lot. They let you know what they think. And not all my readers love me. A lot of them, in fact, really didn't love me. But sometimes that makes for the best relationship. My favorite single piece of mail that I ever got, and I took a picture of it, put it in the book, was a postcard, and it just said, "I haven't read your column since you shit on the little drummer boy." And never will. Because I had written about Christmas carols that I don't like. I don't like the little drummer boy. I'm not going to go into great detail, but if you just had a baby and you're in a manger and you're trying to get some sleep, it's not even a real hotel room, and some asshole kid shows up with a drum, and also and I don't mean to make a big deal, drums don't go rum-pum-pum-pum, they go rat-a-tat-tat, okay? So there was that, and I had a lot of I had a lot of situations where I wrote stuff that inspired a lot of angry mail, and inevitably that was good for me. It turned out, it almost always made it better. Probably the most extreme example was I wrote a column once about songs I don't like. I was not talking about Christmas carols, other songs I don't like, and I mentioned the song "I Am I Said" by Neil Diamond, who, let me just stress, is great, is a genius. I love him very much. But in the song "I Am I Said," he goes, "I am I said to no one there, and no one heard it all, not even the chair." Come on, Neil, it's a chair, the table probably didn't pick up on it either, because this is furniture, Neil. So that was not really the whole point of this column, but it really triggered something. There are a lot. You think Salman Rushdie got in trouble? There are a lot of Neil Diamond fans out there, and they really got mad at me. And I got this avalanche of mail from, like, "How dare you? This man's a genius, Mr. Barry. What have you ever done, Mr. Barry? I listened to Heartlight 14 times, and it cured my goiter, Mr. Barry." Like that kind of mail. Carl knows the kind of mail I'm talking about, right? But that's good. When you get a lot of angry mail like that, you can write another column, and I did. I wrote another column about the Neil Diamond people and how upset they were at me. A whole free column I got out of that. But that triggered a whole new avalanche of people who agreed with me, felt very strongly about that, and other songs that they wanted me to hit, attack, like the song "A Horse with No Name." A lot of people don't like. That's like. I had a friend, the late comedian Rich Jenny, used to say, "You're in the desert, you got nothing to do. name the freaking horse, you know. But anyway, my point is, because those people were so angry at me, I got a whole new bunch of columns. And I ended up writing more and more. I ended up writing a whole book about songs people hate just because my readers kept responding. I got into it once with, I wrote a column about what was the stupidest state. Somebody had done an attempt to mathematically determine which state was the stupidest. And I objected to the ranking. And it wasn't because of what you think. Partly I thought Florida was ranked way not high enough. But I mentioned a number of states that I thought, were pretty stupid, and only one of them was, I said, Indiana. And the reason I said that, and it wasn't like a big deal, I said other states too, but I said Indiana because they call themselves Hoosiers, and they cannot tell you why. They cannot explain why and for all we know, it means has sex with caribou, or something like that. We don't know what it, so none of the other states responded this way, but the Indiana people are very sensitive about this. And I got like 300 letters, all of which began, for your information, everyone knows what Hoosier means. And then they had like 300 different explanations. But my favorite one was, for your information, Mr. Barry, Indiana has no caribou. Which was, so he got me, But the other thing, more often than not, the readers were on my side, not attacking me. I didn't mind it when they attacked me; that was always fun. But when they were on my side, that was also really fun. And the one example that kind of my crowning moment, I think, in 2003, this was back when more people had landlines than do now. And in 2003, the federal government was going to pass a law that would make it possible for you to get on a no-call list, and telemarketers would not be able to call you at home. Very, very popular law. There was an organization called the American Teleservices Association, which is the telemarketers, and they sued to block that. And their argument was that it would put a lot of telemarketers, 2 million people, out of business if they wouldn't have jobs, which is like saying if you make mugging illegal, there'd be 2 million muggers out. So, but anyway, they argued, the American Teleservices Association argued that they had a constitutional right to call you at home. So I wrote a column about this and said, I don't know, is that true, is it not true? Tell me what you think. No, better yet, here's the number of the American Teleservices Association. Let them know what you think. And I did not know what the reaction was going to be, but God bless the American public. They shut down the American Teleservices Association switchboards completely for days and days. It made all the newspapers, and they were very upset that they were bothered. Anyway. So anyway, I'm not going to keep going about my book because I feel like I'm dominating up here. But that's sort of what the book is about. And now, Carl, I don't really know what Carl's going to say.
Well, I have to talk a little bit about. I'm not going to talk about my mail, but I am going to talk about my latest book, Fever Beach, and it's related to some mail. One time I got a letter from the Texas Department of Corrections that notified me that they were banning one of my novels. I mean, that's pretty exciting, but I thought, they're afraid of what my effect on the prison population is going to be? And it was a book I did a long time ago called Double Whammy, and it was about, the sex and murder on the professional bass fishing circuit. And I thought, I think these guys have seen worse than that. They're in prison. But I bring that up because I've been on edge for the last couple of weeks, hopefully, because I had heard that in the tiny town of Brooksville, Florida, which is Hernando County, that there was a movement to ban Fever Beach from the county library. And any author is lying if they don't tell you that that's the best thing that can happen to your book, is have it banned in a place like Brooksville. And they're all nice folks, but they were supposed to, this was spearheaded by the Moms for Liberty. Yeah. So that even made it more exciting to me. It made it more of an honor. This was an interesting chapter of the Moms for Liberty because the vice chairman is the husband of the chairman. So he's not really a mom for liberty unless it's a much more welcoming and open community than they. Anyway, apparently this library advisory group sort of meets in secret. So it might be banned, it might not be, but my editor is waiting for the call so we can say it was banned in Brooksville. And the reason that they gave was that it offended conservative values. And I saw this and I thought, the only people I attacked in this book were racists and white supremacists. I mean, they would be pissed off by the book. That was the whole point. But somehow it hit a nerve, I guess, in Brooksville. My idea for the book came from January 6th, the insurrection. This was a big part of it. I was watching it like all of you, everybody was, watching the mob storm into the Capitol. And I remember in the coverage afterwards, they were saying that several of the patriotic insurrectionists had taken a dump inside the Capitol halls. And I thought, what must your life be like if that was your mission from the beginning? Like, I can't wait to get in there and take a shit on something. So I thought, that's the kind of character I want. But the other thing was, in the novel, this character, because I knew the Proud Boys had started in Miami. I mean, of course they did, but I thought, what would happen? I was thinking, who doesn't get into the Proud Boys that applies to get? I mean, how low is the bar? If you're such a putz that you can't get into the Proud Boys, I bet you're the sort of person that would shit in the Capitol. And in my case, I thought, well, this guy is so messed up that he thinks he's doing the patriotic thing. Well, what would happen if you took a dump on a statue of a Confederate hero in the Capitol? And that's what he did. The guy had a beard in the statue, and he thought it was Ulysses Grant, and it wasn't. It was a real guy. I forget his name in the South. I paid tribute to him in the novel because it gets all cleaned up. But I thought that's how you would get kicked out of the Proud Boys. You took a crap on the wrong statue. So. Anyway, and I'm thinking when this whole Brooksville thing came up, I thought, maybe that was a little too close to home. Maybe somebody on that board had done something like that and just really didn't want to see it made fun of in a novel. But, I think that comes from not just being a columnist, but from being in Florida all the time. You look at these events different. Dave does, and I do too, than the rest of the country is looking at them. You're always thinking in terms of, well, that's horrible, but who would do that? I mean, you think, okay, they go home at night to their wives or their husbands and say, oh, man, we had a blast today. We actually got in the Capitol. We almost stopped the whole election verification process, and here's the best part. Here's what I did. And all your kids are at the table. And they're watching, and they're, God damn, they're looking, dad shit in the Capitol, Jesus. Anyway, so that gave me some ideas for some characters and for things like and also in election interference. This guy in my novel, he starts after the Proud Boys boot him out. He gets blackballed from all the legitimate white supremacy organizations. Can't get into any of them. The Oath Keepers don't want him. Nobody wants him. So he starts his own group, and he has to recruit. And his group is called the Strokers for Liberty. But I'm going to tell you a true story where that came from. How many? Raise your hands how many of you have read the actual bylaws of the Proud Boys?
C-SPAN's Afterwords podcast continues in a moment. Now back to C-SPAN's Afterwords podcast.
Well, one of the tenets, Dave knows this, of the Proud Boys is they have a very, very strict rules about masturbation. I'm not making this up. They disapprove and they don't want their members, they're allowed like once a month. You gotta look this up. And I thought, well, if I was starting a rival group, the first thing I would do is take it the other direction. We believe in the same things, except it's okay. Masturbation is okay. So his group is Strokers for Liberty. And he picks off a number of people who are disenchanted in the Proud Boys by that last part. And then they set off on their own mission to save the country. So, but when they saw these stories, I thought, this belongs in a novel, because that's not a rule you would normally associate with insurrectionism, Anyway, so that's my pitch for Fever Beach. And now, but Dave and I, we did want to talk a little bit, because we're very close to the site, as you know, of the Donald Trump Presidential Library. That's
right. We were wondering, like, though, what books would it have?
Yeah. It is one of those things you can't make it up, and it all happened very quickly with no public input at all. And here's the best part: it's sort of an afterthought. It's mentioned, it wouldn't be just a library. There's going to be a hotel and resort complex. Now we're getting somewhere. But someday we'll probably all be here, and hopefully, and we'll be eating our words, because people will be lining up to go in there and see maybe the galleys of The Art of the Deal.
Yeah. Or just to play the slots.
Yeah. But of all the towns, and by the way, how often do you think he's going to be coming to? If there's no golf course, he's not coming. It's a great honor.
Yeah, no, we're all honored. Well, I have one quick question about Fever Beach, your novel. It's a medical detail. Guy loses part of his nose, or much of his nose, if I recall correctly. You want to just tell the audience here what they replaced it with? Since you already went to masturbation pretty heavily.
I know it's going to sound far-fetched, but he's the guy who gets in this accident. He's a raging anti-Semite, and he's wheeled in the emergency room, and he's cussing everybody out. There's a Haitian, he's yelling at the Haitian. If there's a Cuban, he's yelling, and he made some anti-Semitic remarks. But the three plastic surgeons who were assigned to attend to the reconstruction of his face happened to be Jewish. So they took the tissue, it's scrotal tissue, and they made him a perfectly functional new nose. But of course, he woke up and it was all covered up and he didn't know, and then he went out into the world and everyone would, they had some names for him, and they said, "Did your nose, is that a sack on your face?" That kind of thing. This was just one more, I like to burden the characters, the bad characters. I like to burden them with some, usually it's an amputation or something like. This was even better, though. I thought, well, this you can't fix. If he's going to go out on dates and things, it's just going to be a problem for him. But I did do a little research on it.
I always wanted to know that, because you also have a character in one of your other books who has a functioning weed whacker instead of a hand.
Yep.
Do you research those things?
I did.
Can you? Okay.
The character's name was Chemo, and he was in a book called Skin Tight, and he was in another novel later. He was a bouncer at a club on South Beach, and he's on the Stiltsville, and he falls off. He's in a fight on Stiltsville, ends up in the water, and a barracuda takes most of one arm, and because he had a flashy watch on, so the barracuda thought it was bait fish, and so he was thinking about what would be useful to have other than a regular prosthetic arm. He was a bouncer, so I thought to myself, boy, if you had a weed whacker on your arm, you could clear out a crowd nobody's gonna fuck with a weed whacker. So I went to a plastic surgeon. I talked to him about it. I said, just say, I don't want to hear if it's plausible or not. I want to know if it's medically possible to attach. It would be a battery-powered weed whacker. We'd have the holster where the battery would be here. And could we get it working? Is there a way to do it? And he sat down, he sketched out for me, and I said, that's all I need to know. And I gave him the weed whacker arm.
See, and people call it fiction, and they don't realize the work that goes into it.
I'll tell you a true story. I got a letter from a guy in Gainesville. It was a clipping out of the newspaper up there he sent me. He was cleaning in a pond, taking golf balls out of a pond, and an alligator grabbed him, and an alligator took his forearm off. And he's quoted in the story as saying, I'm thinking about getting a weed whacker put on there. But that's
and people say we don't do any good in this world.
That's right.
Man.
That's the sort of that
feel-good
feedback
story.
Keeps you going as a writer when all else is bleak and gloomy.
You can make a difference in one person's life.
It's true.
Maybe we should turn it over for questions.
Oh yeah, we probably should.
Yeah.
Did any of you have any questions? See,
it's hard to believe that anybody would.
No, we've really covered everything, haven't we? Nobody's getting up. They're leaving. That's what they're. Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Okay. Bye. Was it the weed whacker or the scrotal story? It's always something like that.
Yes, sir. Oh.
Boy, that was.
Well, this could be a day or two. Yeah, you got all the way around. Here we go.
Sorry.
I went to a couple of your election talks that were very funny with, I think it was WLRN was sponsoring them. They were wonderful and gave us hope. The last big election, I don't remember you doing it. Are you giving them up or did I miss it?
Who are you talking to?
Both of you.
Both of us. Oh, did we give up? Yeah.
The election.
I left the country. I voted. I'm not lying. I voted by mail. I know that's like about 3 million other people did. But I couldn't stand to be here, so my wife and I left the country, and we thought you could escape the election reports coming in where we were, and you couldn't. There was no you go to some bar on this little island, and they'd be looking at the elections. So anyway, there's no escape.
If we had listened to me, this would have all been, I had a win-win solution, which was after the 2020 election, Donald Trump spent 4 years basically saying he won that election, and he was going to anyway. And I said, all right, let's take this to the Supreme Court. I don't care what the legal mechanism is, but around like November of 2024, the Supreme Court should have ruled, you're right. You won the election. And your term is up. And it's win-win. Win-win-win. But nobody listens to me. I'm just a humor columnist. Okay. Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on the emergence of counter information in the internet? For instance, you guys mentioned a lot around white supremacy, things of that nature. Outlets for instance, Elon Musk's Wikipedia that's now allowing the propagation of alternate facts versus things like a Wikipedia.
Well, I mean, I think all of us would hope that people are getting hip to the knowledge that they're getting bombarded from both sides and from everywhere with fake information. AI is scary because it becomes more real looking and more real sounding, and I don't know how you counter it. I don't know how you control it, but it's terrifying what people believe, and what they still believe. I mean, and this is crazy. I have a friend who's like my age. He's all of a sudden got convinced that there's UFOs because he was on some website, and I said, "What was that website?" And it was like Jimmy Smith's UFO website. I said, "Oh, that's a credible source." And the guy, and this is a dude that sees them every night now. Every night he sees a UFO. I don't know how do you stop that kind of mind contamination? I don't have the answer to that. Maybe Dave does.
When AI was a couple years ago when it started, everybody suddenly had access to it. I got probably 500 emails that were all the same. I asked AI to write a Dave Barry column, and here's what and they all sucked. So I think it's probably bad for humanity in general, but I'm okay with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Hiaasen. Big fan. I was first introduced to your work in the University of Florida. Managed to survive with all my limbs intact. No alligators got me. But the first book of yours that I read was Team Rodent. Fascinating book about Disney and the ills of corporate business. Is there any chance that you're going to be doing any more writing like that in the future?
No, probably not. That was a little book thing that the publisher had going for a while. It was like, they said, "Can you write 25,000 words on something that bothers you?" Then they threw that out, and Jimmy Carter did when his was all about faith and the goodness in humanity. And I said, I'd like to do it about Disney World and the reach of Disney World because, and I'm not going to do any more. I don't think I can get back on the property. But that was kind of the whole point, was that I can't get into it. It's just more of a family crowd. But like there was an incident when they opened this Animal Kingdom, Disney's Animal Kingdom, and it really wasn't. They weren't that wild, and so one of the deals after this book came out is the Washington Post said, "We'll do a story on the book, but you have to go back there with us." And it was just murder. We went to the Animal Kingdom, and there was some kind of creature. It was an anteater. I think it was a giant anteater. Anyway, I walk up to this exhibit, and there's a bunch of kids and got people looking. The anteater, whatever it was sound asleep, snoring. It was the middle of the day. Of course he was. It's the middle of the day in Florida. He's sleeping, and so point to it. And then there's that little voice behind us, and it's one of the cast members, one of the people who worked there. And I'm not lying. She's sitting there saying, he's sleeping now, but I know you want to see him. Here's some Polaroids we took earlier. And she handed them out to the kids. It was the whole idea that nature just was not going to go along with the script. But they were afraid it was going to traumatize a child to see a sleeping anteater or honey bear or whatever the hell it was. But that only ratified, everything in my brain about it. But I think I've done my thing on Disney, and my kids and grandkids are all grown. I have no obligations anymore. So I think I'm done. Dave, do you still go?
No, what I do is just go to the wall and throw money over. Which is like basically the same experience, but with just a lot less waiting.
See, for me, as a Miami resident that lived through Hurricane Andrew, the section of the book that spoke about the Disney property that was purchased and they removed all of their name from all legal documents, basically keeping them free from any kind of lawsuits. I found that incredibly fascinating, and thank you so much for doing the research and sharing that information with us.
Oh, thanks for saying. Yeah, the Herald let me do a whole series on lawsuits against Disney, and I have to say I shouldn't laugh, but some of them were pretty hilarious. I'll just tell one quick one. It was Pluto or Goofy. What's the difference between those guys? It was
one of them can talk.
Oh, well, this is a main street.
Not Pluto. Pluto is the same species, I think, is goofy, but for some reason, one
He
of them's a
couldn't-
pet.
The one that couldn't talk was
Pluto.
Yeah, he was in the Main
Evolution.
Street Parade, and he's dancing down there, and he had a bad day, I guess, and his tail's flopping, and some little kid runs out of the crowd and yanks on his tail, and he just kind of, they do the fake smile, and he thinks the kid's going to go ahead. The kid starts yanking and yanking, and Pluto just had he turned around, he drop kicked the little bastard 3 rows in.
I was I just want, Carl is like Mr. I don't like Disney, but I went to Disney a million times and wrote books for Disney. I was in the Main Street Electrical Parade as a grand marshal once, riding in a car with Clarabelle, who is taller than you in real life than you would. But the thing about it, when you're in the grand marshal in the parade, there's, I don't know if you've probably all been there, there's this gigantic bunch of floats behind you, but they send you out first on this car, and we had ears. We were wearing ears. And they tell you to wave, so we're waving. It's my family and me and Ridley Pearson and his family and Clarabelle were waving. And the thing is, there were 65,000 or something like that people in the park waiting to see this parade. And they're waiting to see all these floats, and instead they see this stupid car with, me and Ridley Pearson and Clarabelle, and where's the parade? Who are these dorks with the cow? It's like we disappointed 65,000 people. That was the feeling. But we also had a pretty interesting behind-the-scenes experience with Peter Pan. We did an event with Peter Pan, and
So it's true then.
no, not. He's a proud boy. No, kidding. That's
but no
just
masturbation.
so wrong, and but we were waiting to go on for we're promoting a book, and we had Peter Pan with us because the book was about Peter Pan, and we're in this little room off to the main area where we're supposed to go out. There's a big crowd out there, and we're in this little room with Peter Pan. This guy, he's in tights and everything. Peter Pan, and so we have 15 minutes to kill with Peter Pan. So I'm just trying to make small talk. So I go, so how do you like working here? And he goes, this is what he did. It's a beautiful day in Neverland. Have you seen Wendy? We're like, no, we haven't seen Wendy. We're in this closet with you. Because they can't come out of character when they're wearing the uniform. So the lesson there is don't try to make small talk with Peter Pan or Pluto or any of them because they won't talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, well, it's probably more of an answer than you were looking for, but.
Carl, next month, Fever Beach is our book club book. Do you have...
Are you a mom for liberty?
Yeah.
Do you have maybe one line or one sentence about the book that would shock or surprise the book group?
You mean you want me to quote from my own?
Well, no, I'm thinking something that inside information I have that I could present to the group.
Oh boy.
He gave you the scrotum thing.
Yeah.
You're
I
right.
think
I wrote that down.
I think that's
yes.
as far as I want to go with it. No, I just just tell. There's a couple scenes that take place inside of Buc-ee's. Anybody been to Buc-ee's?
Oh, yeah.
I'd never been to Buc-ee's, and I went to Buc-ee's once. My favorite part is the wall of jerky, the whole big wall of jerky. But anyway, that just tell them that I was very inspired. I felt like a true patriot when I was in Buc-ee's looking for the jerky. I don't know.
Thank you.
Good luck with the book club.
Hi, guys. So in Florida and definitely in Miami, you're not really a politician if you don't have some sort of scandal related to sexual harassment, guns, or porno, or even more recently, your father's a serial killer. That's a real thing. So my question for you is, what's your ideal candidate or governor of Florida?
C-SPAN's Afterwords podcast continues in a moment. Now back to C-SPAN's Afterwords podcast.
I really can't imagine anyone that I would wish that job on. I think there'd be some humorous. I don't know, Dave. Can you think of anyone that you would want to be governor of Florida?
The late Bob Graham.
Yeah. Well, he was. I meant someone new.
But I'm just thinking, I'm realizing we're going to run out of time here. And Carl and I have a Florida song that we were going to get you to sing. Do we have time to do that? Carl and I wrote a song. And we would, every now and then, Carl and I will exchange emails about that. Usually I'm sending him an email saying, did you see this? And it's like some news event. But the one that really got us both going was a few years ago. A couple was stopped in North Central Florida, and arrested. And the woman had a number of illegal reptiles, turtles mostly, but also one baby alligator. And Carl's going to tell you where the police found it concealed.
Well, they opened the trunk of the car. This was in Punta Gorda. They opened the trunk of the car, and it's full of turtles that they'd caught, and they were going to be smuggled out of the country and for whatever they use little turtles for these days. But the police officer who stopped noticed something unusual about the female occupant of the car, and when he took her out, and she had an alligator in her pants. In her yoga pants.
Yoga pants.
Namaste. Right? Yeah.
So I don't remember how it came, but we decided we're exchanging emails that this was a country western song. And we wrote it, and it's called She Had Turtles in Her Trunk and a Reptile in Her Pants. And we don't have a guitar up here, and I'm not going to try. We'll just sing a little bit of it, but you do have a part in it, which is when Carl gives you the gesture, you go, her yoga pants. Okay, just try it one time. Okay, and I'll let you. Do you remember your line? Carl wrote a great line. It's the best line in the whole song. You don't remember it?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I do remember.
So I won't. I'll just sort of sing it, and then we'll get to the chorus. And remember your part again? Okay. It occurred in Punta Gorda. Did they break the law? Well, sorta. There was a stop sign, but they did not stop. No. Your line.
Tell me again.
Her boyfriend's bladder
Ceased to function somewhere
west of Yeehaw Junction. So she blew fast and never saw the cop. But she had turtles in her trunk and a reptile in her pants. They're just two smuggler kids and they never had a chance. They got busted for possession, but they made a full confession. So don't hate her for the gator in her pants. Don't hate her for the gator in her pants. Thank you. Carl Hiaasen for governor, ladies and gentlemen.
Dave Barry.
Thanks for listening to Afterwords from C-SPAN. You can watch more conversations with authors like this one every Sunday on C-SPAN 2's Book TV. Book TV and all the C-SPAN networks are now available to watch live on YouTube TV. Learn more at tv.youtube.com. And join us next week to learn how new words get added to the dictionary. We'll hear from author Stefan Fatsis, who describes his experience working at Merriam-Webster in his book, Unabridged, The Thrill of and Threat to the Modern Dictionary.